We've heard the news from the BBC. Now it's your turn.
You can post on facebook.com/World Have Your Say or get in touch via Twitter at BBC_WHYS.
Welcome to World Have Your Say.
Hello there, welcome indeed. South Sudan became the world's newest country 9 months ago after years of internal North-South war in the old Sudan. But a lot of you are telling us you fear the tension between the new country and the one it broke away from could lead to war again. In fact, Mustafa in Khartoum called us to say it is already a war between the two countries. Every time there's conciliation, it falls apart again. I'm no longer optimistic that the outcome will be good. Do you agree? We're going to hear people from both sides of the border talk to each other about why they think the two countries are getting angrier with each other and what they think the outcome might be. You can tweet with the hashtag WHYS to get involved.
Call us on country code 44 20 70 83 72 72.
Hi there, it's Ben James here with you today, and we'll be in and around Sanford, Florida later on in the programme too. There's a lot more conversation about the Trayvon Martin case today, with a charge of second-degree murder for the man who shot him, George Zimmerman. If you want to talk to people who are there, or indeed people who are in Sudan or South Sudan, the number's the name through the programme. It's country code 44 20 70 83 72 72. Now then, on the Sudan and South Sudan story, let me introduce you to Hannah McNeish, who's a freelance journalist in Juba in South Sudan. Ahmed El-Zobia is a journalist with the Sudan Tribune, based in Khartoum but actually in the UK at the moment. Ferdinand von Habsburg is based in Nairobi in Kenya. He's done humanitarian work in both Sudan and South Sudan over more than a decade. And then also we've got Anissa Achieng, who is a member of Parliament in South Sudan, and she's with us from Juba. Hello to all four of you.
Hello.
Hello.
And Hannah, let me start with you. And does it feel, from where you're sitting in Juba, like war is approaching?
Well, today the President gave a speech to Parliament, and to rounds of rapturous applause, he said that he was not going to pull out his troops from Heglig, which is a contested area between Sudan and South Sudan, and importantly houses Sudan's oil facilities. And there was large backing. He said that this new country would defend itself as long as Sudan was aggressing. But he also told the UN, of saying to Ban Ki-moon, UN Secretary General, that he would not pull out his forces, and that in fact he might march forces into another contested area nearby called Abyei. So as far as the situation looks in South Sudan, it does seem that both nations are quite defiant of international attempts to draw them back to talks.
Anissa Achieng in Juba, how does it look to you? Hello, Anissa, are you hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you. Yes, in Juba, of course, when we receive news about war, it reminds us of the 21 years war. War is negative. I'm speaking from peace perspective. We did not expect our neighboring country to come into war aggression. I don't think Southern Sudan and we, the women of Southern Sudan, will dare to lose again 2.5 million youth for no cause. The death we surpassed during 21 years, it was for the cause. Now we got independence, and we are now breathing the independence and freedom. Why not address those post-independence through dialogue, through peace? And the mechanism for peace is there. Why go back to military mechanism?
Okay.
This is my perspective in Juba, and all of us are concerned. As a member of parliament, we really want to be that. Let them go back into peace dialogue.
Okay, well, let's bring in Ahmed El-Zobia to talk to you. He's a journalist normally based in Khartoum here in the UK at the moment. Ahmed, talk to Anissa. Do you agree with her stance on things there?
I think I agree with Anissa. Nobody wants a war between South Sudan, which is newly independent country, and Sudan. I think financially and economically, both countries could not afford to have a full-scale war at the moment. In Sudan, I think the tactic of war being used to mobilize the Sudanese people to support the government, because the government in Sudan is in difficult political position. Unlike the situation in South Sudan, there is a lot of support for the position of SPLM in the south, but unlikely in the north, there is not a lot of support for NCP here. And especially with the war in Blue Nile and South Kordofan, and also continuing in Darfur, the NCP, which is the National Congress Party, are finding themselves to be very isolated here in the north. So this is one of the techniques to mobilize Sudanese people, to give them some kind of political support to engage in this kind of war-like activities. At the moment, they're mobilizing people, the media and the TV and the radio, talking about these issues. And frankly, many Sudanese are indifferent to the position of the government, or there is some very tiny minority or hardcore supporter of the NCP.
So it's being hyped up by the media to some extent, you're saying, Ahmed?
Yeah, they are. There is a very, very popular TV program. I'm sure Anissa heard about it. They call it the Marta Arena.
Well, Hannah, you're also a journalist. Do you see some of that hype in the media that Ahmed seems to be referring to there?
Well, I went up to Unity State on Tuesday and actually went up to the front lines to experience some of the shelling and the bombing and the intense ground fighting that's going on there. I mean, the war up there is very, very real, and what you have filling the airwaves are revolutionary songs and revolutionary speeches that people say that they haven't heard since the last civil war in the 80s and 90s. And also you see truckloads and truckloads of soldiers racing around the state capital and up to the front lines. So it's very, very real there. Also, today the government of South Sudan said that Sudan dropped 5 bombs on the town of Bentiu, which is the state capital of Unity, near the front lines, which has completely terrorized citizens. They did see a bomber plane a couple of weeks ago and were frightened of war, but now it has become very, very real. And I don't think there's anyone in South Sudan who's not aware of the real danger of returning back to full-on war.
Hannah, I know you've got to go shortly, but I'm fascinated by the songs and speeches being heard on the radio. What sort of things are they telling people to do, or what sort of feeling are they trying to inspire in people?
Well, I'm afraid that I don't speak Arabic, so I wouldn't be able to tell you. This is what I heard from. I heard these songs and speeches on the radio. They are broadcast for hours and hours, and they are spurring on the soldiers who are on the front lines, just to secure South Sudan as an independent nation and to fight for their homeland.
Hannah McNeish, thank you very much, freelance journalist speaking to us live from Juba in South Sudan. Let's bring in Eric Reeves then from Massachusetts. He's a Sudan expert based in that US state. Welcome to the programme, Eric. And Hannah there saying that as far as she could see, the war is very real in that border area, something echoed by a number of people getting in touch, like Maloueth in Uganda, who posts on Facebook. South Sudan's acting in self-defence after continuous aerial bombardments and ground attacks, so there's no need for Bashir to complain. He's been beating the drums of war, so this time he has to dance. Well, we'll get into the political implications of a statement like that in a moment, but Eric, do you think that the war is real? War is happening now?
War has been clearly impending for over a year, beginning with the military seizure of Abyei by Sudan armed forces in May of last year. What I would highlight in the present situation is, first of all, this is the third assault on what is being called the north-south border in the so-called Tishwan area between Unity State in the south and South Kordofan in the north. In fact, that's misreporting because Khartoum has steadfastly refused to negotiate the final terms of the north-south border. Heglig, which is the city, the town, the oil town that's been seized by the southern SPLA is claimed by many Southerners. It's not as your Africa Minister Henry Bellingham is suggesting, that this is actually a cross-border operation. The SPLA has been accepting this north-south border, but only because it has yet to be negotiated.
Okay. I just want to bring in Ferdinand here, because we've not heard from you yet Ferdinand. And Ahmed was earlier on making the point that he thinks economically both countries just could not afford a big conflict at this time. As someone who's done humanitarian work there, what would the consequences be?
I think the consequences are enormous. I mean, we've seen, as was mentioned earlier, the impact in terms of lives, in terms of displacement. I mean, during the war, we saw at least between 4 and 5 million displaced, large numbers of whom went to Khartoum, including then the whole disruption of services, and generally life, really rolls backwards, particularly with the gains that were made over the last few years. It would be catastrophic, I think, for populations. And I think the other thing to note is really the fact that many people have really walked with this trauma for a large part of their lives. I mean, the last 40 years have seen this conflict running, up and down the map of Sudan and South Sudan. And people really, it doesn't take much to make people fall back into this deep terror of what conflict will do, including aerial bombardments, but also ground offensives and the proxy war that goes on between Sudan and South Sudan and has gone on for a long time. So I think it would be devastating to the populations, first of all, and of course the economies that are largely dependent on the oil, would suffer. I mean, any of the oil infrastructure, which of course has been mentioned in some statements by various officials in Sudan, could be a target, certainly to try to hamper any flow of oil. Now, of course, that's part of a wider negotiation, but at the moment, that could become a very real target. And I think what we're seeing is the potential for this to escalate into urban centres, which of course is very alarming.
Anissa Achieng?
Yes. Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah, how do you respond to Ferdinand's analysis of the situation?
In fact, the analysis is true in such a way that Unity State and other parts like Upper Nile, the war here is interest of oil and the resources. The resources and the oil issue should not target Southern Sudanese, innocent Southern Sudanese to death. It would have been handled through the dialogue, through the negotiation. Why should Khartoum again want to aggress into war? Do they want to love war? In fact, my issue is that when Antinov is over, how can the humanitarian services be given to the people who have just returned from Khartoum? And now we are losing young children who have been bombed because they disappeared for many years. They didn't know about war, and now they are to be killed. We are saying that in Southern Sudan, and me who's speaking as a peace perspective, please let Khartoum embrace peace. Let international community come to where the Pandio, where the SPLA has captured and they are remaining there. Let Abyei people come and solve problem of the boundary and the oil issue.
Okay,
right
okay. Ahmed from Khartoum, but in the UK, is it up to Khartoum to embrace peace?
Well, I think Khartoum should be pressurized to embrace peace. The first thing regarding the humanitarian situation, there is an agreement between the African Union and the Arab League and the UN to facilitate humanitarian access to South Kordofan and Blue Nile. And this has happened I think 1 month ago. I think the government of Khartoum blocked that kind of agreement. And I think there is a dire situation now, especially in South Kordofan. We're talking about over 250,000 people are displaced or refugees in South Kordofan, plus in the similar or less number in Blue Nile and that part of the country. So I think there is a lot of pressure should be put in Khartoum to facilitate humanitarian access for these refugees or IDPs in these areas.
I'd add, this is Eric, I'd add one or two other points here. One is that the agreement that was arranged by the African Union, the UN, and the Arab League was promulgated in early February. The Sudan People's Liberation Movement North, representing South Kordofan and Blue Nile, signed on February 9th. Khartoum, 2 months later, more than 2 months later, is saying it still needs time to study this proposal. What they are doing is trying to run out the clock so that the rains begin late April, early May, and it will simply be impossible to move humanitarian assistance in. But I think the larger issue here is what I call moral equivalence, the peculiar way in which the international community holds Juba and Khartoum equally responsible for the violence that's occurring now, for just about every problem that the international community has found itself unable to resolve or assist the two Sudans in resolving. There are not equal moral and political and diplomatic equities here. There is an aggressor, it's Khartoum. There is only one air force in this war. It is bombing the people of the South. And if the international community maintains this perverse moral equivalence in its assessment of Juba and Khartoum, this only works to encourage Khartoum to be more aggressive.
Well, if you're listening to Eric and you agree or disagree, you can call in on country code 442070 83 72 72. You can get online as well and get in touch, like Paul in Kampala, who tweets, the two Sudans are heading to war since neither's committed to laying down their guns. Isogenius in Spain posts on Facebook, the United Nations should intervene to avert war between the two countries. Let's go to the phones now and speak to Alfred, who's on the phone from Juba. Hello, Alfred. Just wondering whether you agree with our Facebook poster from Spain who says the UN should get involved at this stage.
Definitely, UN has been involved right from the beginning in the issues of Sudan, and yes, they should actually get involved. They should continue to be involved. But my only problem here with the UN is they are not doing enough. They are not doing enough. Like, right now, the Northern Sudan is bombing South Sudan. UN is not doing enough.
What should they be doing, do you think?
They should really tell or take action. If it means military action, they should take it. We don't want to get involved in this war. We are done with it. Now there are peacekeepers around here. People are being killed, peacekeepers. They are just looking at it. Somebody is being killed. You cannot help. What is this?
Anissa Achieng, MP in South Sudan, do you agree with Alfred?
Yes, my voice is that UN should really make an effort to create an airspace to protect civilians, because Khartoum need to be really pressured and told to stop bombing civilian areas. They should concentrate, if they want war, and they should concentrate where the military are. But now the UN should protect civilians and should provide services, as Alfred has said. But it is not enough. It is also good for UN to really be fair on justice and rights for who is right and where, because they are on the ground. That's why I was saying it is now time that the UN and other bodies should come on the ground and judge who is right, whether in Tangier or Italy, because by talking on phone or being outside cannot help. We need protection because civilians like us, women and children, are looking at the UN who are here to protect us.
And Mugabe in Liberia got in touch with us on Skype to make a similar point, saying, I think the world has to be decisive on the issues of borders and oil wealth between the two countries. And, of course, it's BBC_WHYS if you do want to get in touch with us via Skype. And talking of oil wealth, Shehu in Nigeria posts on Facebook, it's disturbing to note that Sudan and South Sudan may start a regional war. Is oil a curse or a blessing? I'll leave that for philosophers. Well, Ahmed from the Sudan Tribune. I don't know whether you are a philosopher, but maybe do you want to answer that question? Is oil a blessing or a curse in this? It seems it's causing some problems here.
Well, it could be both. It depends how people use it. And I think the main issue here regarding the disagreement between Southern Sudan and Sudan, I think people should go back to the drawing board, because there is a very good initiative back in 2010 headed by W. Mbeki, which is initiated by the African Union, which is tried to focus the two countries in solving 4 issues, which is citizenship, border issues, and natural resources, plus financial issues. And unfortunately, this is not happening now. I think if there is any pressure, should be focused on that. Two countries should go back to the drawing board, should focus especially in the issue of how to resolve this outstanding issue, which is what they called at that moment post-referendum issues.
Eric, in Massachusetts, do you think that if there was no oil involved here, things would be far more calm?
I agree entirely that it depends upon who controls the oil and the way in which the oil is controlled. As we presently see it, oil has been enormously destructive. The north-south border has been moved relentlessly southward in the wake of oil discoveries in the 1970s. Oil has funded profligate military expenditures by the Khartoum regime over the past decade and more, weapons that have been used against the people of the South. As to the UN, it's quite right that the UN should have a greater presence, but the presence that is there has been able to ascertain in many of these cases of bombings and attacks who is responsible. But there's been a political decision at the UN that this information will not be publicized. And this creates the ambiguity I was speaking of earlier. Who's to blame here? Is it Juba or is it Khartoum? Well, in fact, if the UN had the political will, it could make known intelligence that would clarify a great deal of what we hear as a he said, she said in the news.
Well, Eric Reeves in Massachusetts, thank you very much indeed for taking part in the programme. Ahmed El-Zobia, also journalist for the Sudan Tribune from Khartoum, but in the UK at the moment. Ferdinand von Habsburg, thanks for your time too, from Nairobi. And of course, Anissa Achiang, South Sudanese MP. Newton in Juba's emailed World Have Your Say. He says, why should we withdraw from Heglig when they haven't withdrawn from Abyei? And maybe that's the nub of the issue there. And Isaac is in Melbourne, but from South Sudan originally. I think South Sudan should withdraw from Heglig before things get worse. Well, you can tweet with the hashtag WHYS to carry on the conversation online.
We've heard the news from the BBC. Now it's your turn.
You can post on facebook.com/worldhaveyoursay
or get in touch via Twitter at BBC_WHYS.
Welcome to World Have Your Say.
Welcome back. The Trayvon Martin case continues to be a big part of your conversations in the United States, but also beyond. Now that George Zimmerman has been charged with second-degree murder, does that calm down some of the tensions there have been or cause new ones? We're going to speak to people in and around Sanford, Florida, to hear what they're saying to each other about the case now. I've just been on the local newspaper's website, the OrlandoSentinel.com. George Zimmerman's face is front and centre. The paper says, after weeks of demanding justice in the shooting of Trayvon Martin, reaction across Central Florida to Zimmerman's second-degree murder charge shows measured relief. Well, it's not just Orlando. There's a global conversation, more than 11,000 articles about him on Google News worldwide too. You're talking about race relations, the police, the media, the criminal justice system. We'll reflect all that and whatever else you want to talk about when you post on facebook.com/World Have Your Say.
Get in touch via email, worldhaveyoursay@bbc.com.
And with me to discuss this, I'm pleased to say we've got Don Miller and Demika Page alongside me, in a virtual sense at least. They host the Don Miller Show, based in Central Florida. Welcome to World Have Your Say, guys.
Thank you so much, Ben, for having us.
And you hosted a programme, didn't you, called Heal Sanford, right from the streets of Sanford quite recently. Could you just tell us what in Sanford needs healing?
Well, we went back to the community to touch the local businesses. Of course, this situation here had become a very heated racial situation, and there were a lot of negative information going out, one of which was a flyer being passed around in the community asking African Americans, asking black people not to do business with white businesses in that community. We wanted to get involved in that to let people know that this was not about race. As a matter of fact, it was about one person taking the life of another. So we went to the community, we broadcasted live, we touched the local businesses, and we engaged the community as to continue to move forward. Because again, it's about healing a community. This community has been divided significantly, and it was important to us that we bring this back together.
Well, with us as well, Melissa Clouthier is a conservative blogger in Texas. Barbara Liston is a Reuters reporter in Orlando, Florida. And Barbara, I think you broke the Trayvon Martin story initially. You've been following it all the way through. Just give us an idea of how things have changed, what the trajectory has been of this story, and how things feel now.
Well, of course, the big change is George Zimmerman being charged, and that's what a lot of people have been asking for. Mr. Zimmerman's lawyer is hoping that will calm things, and because this is what everybody wanted, and now the process can go through the Criminal Justice Center. So we'll see. Everyone is waiting right now. Any minute, George Zimmerman will be making his first appearance in court in Sanford, at which time he may be granted a bond to get out of jail. We're all waiting to see what will happen.
And we'll certainly keep across that during the programme. Melissa, welcome back to the programme. Just give us your take on this story, how it's panned out, and your feelings today.
Well, I'm glad that there's some forward movement, that Zimmerman has been arrested, and this is moving into the court systems and not going to be tried in the court of public opinion so much, because I think it's been wholly irresponsible the way it's been handled by the press. Not locally, I must add that the local press has been fantastic about this, but nationally it's been just a disaster, very divisive, and hopefully some of that will calm down and the facts of the case, and hopefully Zimmerman can get a fair trial. This is it's difficult to imagine an unpoisoned jury at this point, but we'll see.
D'Amica, come in there. What's your take on that? Do you agree with Melissa's analysis?
I agree with her, and I think that at the end of the day, most people, and I'm talking about black people and white people, brown people, most people wanted to just see this process take place. And I think that because initially it did not appear that it would go down that path, that is why a lot of people had a lot to say, and they just pulled from answers in different places, and quite frankly, pulled from answers from people who didn't have them. So I believe the fact that this process is taking place, it will calm a lot of nerves.
Well, other people getting in touch to talk about the role of the media, and let's develop this a little bit. Kendall Garner posts on Facebook, the media's tried the man already without much evidence saying he was racist. It was unprofessional to do that and has influenced the public. This is the job of the court, not the media.
Well, you know, it's interesting too, and Barbara, you've taken this story worldwide with your coverage for Reuters right here in Central Florida. This was absolutely not about a race, in my opinion, as it happened that night. Was it about stereotype? Probably so, but not necessarily about race. I think the media took this story and created a storm of racism, quite frankly, a line of division, and then some of the national activists, one being Al Sharpton and Reverend Jesse Jackson.
Don, let me just dive in there,
ahead.
just because we can get to the court in Sanford and hear a little of what's going on there.
There's no need to appoint other counsel. I show that he has good and adequate counsel. He's well represented at this stage, and that date will hold. That is the right date, right, Madam Clerk? Let's get that straight. Yep. May 29th, 1:30 is his next official court date at this time. All other matters, therefore, will be taken up with the circuit court at the courthouse. Mr. O'Mara, agree?
I agree, Your Honor.
Very good. State, anything else?
No, sir. Thank you very much.
Upon that finding, this hearing at first appearances is concluded.
Thank you for the time, Your Honor, the consideration.
Don't take your time, and I know you got to make arrangements for everybody, and then we'll get the rest of the group in there.
So that's what's going on in court in Sanford, Florida right now. George Zimmerman has been charged with second-degree murder. Barbara, Reuters reporter in Orlando, just explain a bit more about what we were hearing there.
Well, that was his first appearance, and frankly, with the audio, I couldn't tell exactly what the judge said about bond. When he was arrested, he was given no bond, meaning that he could not get out of jail. He has to have an amount set and then posted to get out of jail. Now, could you hear, did the judge change that, or is it still no bond? I couldn't tell.
Well, we'll certainly keep everybody up to date with that when we find out. I'm seeing TV pictures now of the end of that hearing too, but as soon as we get that detail, we'll certainly bring it to everyone. Let's get back to some of the comments that people are sending in about this. And a bunch of people talking about the police. Now, this from Gabriel, who posts on Facebook from Liberia. He says it's mind-boggling to see law enforcement officers dancing to the tune of racism in this modern era. So, look, whether or not any police officers are or are not racist, that's certainly the perception that Gabriel's getting. Don, what's the perception in Sanford, and has it changed people's perception?
This police agency in Sanford has a history of missteps as it relates to minorities. The historical mindset of those who live in that community who are not majority race, quite frankly, minorities, are quite frightened and have no trust for that agency. Over the years, that agency has had significant missteps as it relates to race. So, the mindset is that that agency cannot be trusted, and they do have a racial problem.
Melissa, people talking about the police that you've seen and read about too?
Well, I mean, I can't speak to the local police issues. I don't know anything about that, but I do know that what has happened nationally has been kind of a travesty of justice and media malpractice. NBC doctored audio for this. ABC was presenting text saying that racially horrible words that no one should ever use.
Well, we certainly don't know anything about that, and I can't confirm that sitting here right now. But generally, what's the perception been of the police, and how has it changed through how it's been covered?
Well, I like I said, I don't know what the local perception of police is, so I can't speak to that. But that I can assure you that I'm not making it up what NBC did. So anybody can go check it out. They've had to issue retractions and change that. And meanwhile, the local reporting has been great, but blogs debunk certain things. You got voice experts fixing things. The problem around this whole issue is that the media seem to see a narrative that they wanted to push forward, and it's very damaging. If America wants to heal racial issues, we don't do that by creating this very highly charged situation and not getting the facts out. And so I'm glad finally that the facts are winning out. But this is something that has been really driven by the media and is a real problem.
Jamaica, come in there.
Ben, I want to say this. I think that the fact that the media has gone away from traditional journalism and reporting facts, resourcing it, and they're more concerned about what leads, what bleed leads, and that's the slogan most often used. So if the media only cares about getting the attention and not providing information, we will continue to have this problem. So when we get back to just traditional reporting and journalism, then we can hold things accountable that's presented to the public.
Let's bring in Brandon Morse, who's listening to you from Georgia. He runs the Misfit Politics website, tweets at Conservative Punk. Brandon, I don't know if you caught all of that, but how do you feel about the role of the media in this story?
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement. They blew it way out of proportion. What should have been something for the Florida courts to decide became a national issue that certain public figures in our nation pushed for no good reason but to incite some sort of favor for their side, which, it stopped being about the tragic death of a young kid, and it started being about, social justice and gun laws and racism. It's been blown way out of proportion to the point where, it's not even about what it should be about anymore.
Don?
Yes, it's interesting you mentioned that because you were familiar. America has some challenges, of course, but there are challenges abroad as also. But when you look at the racial situation that have come from with this one case, one young man being killed on a Sunday rainy night, but with the insertion of some of America's sensationalist activists, as I call them, people who make their money riding the race card, people who are irrelevant without race, like Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, then this is what we get.
I'm just reading on the... Excuse me 1 second. I'm just reading on the Agence France Presse news agency a bit more information about the hearing we heard a little bit from just then. And according to AFP, the judge told George Zimmerman he had set May the 29th as the date for a hearing when he'll be formally read the charges in the killing of Trayvon Martin, aged 17, and will be allowed to apply for bail. You're listening to World Have Your Say on the BBC World Service. And you can call in, of course, to talk about this with our guests on country code 44 2070 83 72 72. Perhaps you're interested in putting a question to people who've been covering this story and living amongst it in the centre there of Florida. John in the US posts on Facebook, I'm relieved this has finally happened. I think it shined a bright light on just how pervasive a force racism still is in this country, and also brought to public attention these horrible stand your ground laws. We might get onto the laws in a moment, but John's first point there, Melissa, perhaps pick up on that it shined a bright light on racism in America.
Well, I don't know that it did at all. I mean, I think it confused the issue of racism in America. It hasn't shined a bright light at all. When you have Spike Lee giving out the address of some couple, some innocent couple in Florida because he's enraged, and when people are portraying Zimmerman as a white man when he's Hispanic, when he has lots of black friends, this is not the simple black and white, pardon the obvious.
Melissa, Mr. Zimmerman is also white and Hispanic. He's mixed. Okay,
That's
we got to
right.
be. He's not. You said Hispanic now. See, they're turning it again. They're spinning it again. The whole blogging spin.
No, but the thing is, he is also Hispanic, and
But he's also white.
That's true, and so is Barack Obama. But
see, how do we get there? That's what happens when we engage a conservative blogger.
Well, I'm glad you're laughing about that, and there's some friendship there as well as some obvious disagreements. Don, just expand a little bit, and then Melissa, you can reply on what you feel this has done in terms of showing what race relations are like in America now.
You know, let's be clear here, Ben. Is it race or is it class? I think this country has moved past race, and we're now engaging in a system of class, the have and the have-nots, the gated community versus the people who live in the wilderness, quite frankly. I think Mr. Zimmerman had in his head that anyone wearing a hoodie in the middle of the night, walking, had something to do in his mindset with wrong. So is it about race? Is it about class? He moved to a gated community to be away from the wilderness. I think he was just as frightened as Mr. Martin was.
You're saying gated community. Have you actually looked at where they live? This is
ma'am, I live 2 blocks away.
Okay, so explain this to me, because when I've looked at it, it looked to me like apartments.
Okay, let me tell you what it looks like. There is a gate. When there is a gate around an environment, it's a gated community where I come from. There is a gate. You have to have a code. You have to call someone to be admitted interest. That's considered a gated community.
I know low-income apartments.
No, it's not low-income.
Where I live that have gates around them.
Okay, well, this is not low-income.
Okay, so it's not low-income. So would you say, millionaires are living there?
No. They're townhomes, and probably the average price in a good market was $400,000.
In a good market. In the market now, what is the price?
Probably $200,000. But the bottom line is, it's not the wilderness.
Average American spends on a house. That's about what an average American spends on a house. I don't know.
What average American buying a $200,000 house?
The average house in America is $190,000.
Okay, let's get back to class versus race.
Well, I'm quite interested in what can I just dive in there, guys? Because I'm really interested to find out why that matters, the price of the house and so on. What's the point we're trying to make here?
And Ben, that's why we probably won't see any real results out of this situation, because out of the Trayvon Martin case, we've had conversations about everything except the problem. And that's the reason for the season, as we would say if it was Christmas.
Brandon, you're listening in Georgia. Come in there and comment on what you've just heard.
I'm listening to all this, and I think, it didn't shine a light on racism, and I'm listening to this right now, and I'm thinking, wow, it really did shine a light on a media sensationalism. It's we're leaving race now, which is good, but we're suddenly getting into class again. Like it's one or the other in this country. I really don't think that either or had anything to do with it. I think it came down to the person. Zimmerman,
So you say
we
Mr.
have
Zimmerman?
Facts. We have facts coming out all the time. We have facts coming out all the time about both the kid and the guy.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, it's for the courts to decide in Florida. We can sit here and say, well, it was race, or it was class, or it doesn't matter. Really, what it boils down to at the end of the day is what kind of person was George Zimmerman? What kind of person was Trayvon Martin? That's not for us
I
to decide.
disagree. I disagree with you. It doesn't matter what kind of person he was. What matters is when the police department showed up on the crime scene, did they do their job? Should he have been allowed to just go home after shooting an unarmed kid, whether he be black or white, and go home and relax on his couch with his gun in hand? That's the issue. It doesn't matter what color they are. Did they do their job properly?
It doesn't matter what color they are. But, I mean, did you read the police reports at all?
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
Every last one of them.
Okay. What did you discover then?
What we discovered was there was a
go home. The thing is, correct me if I'm wrong.
He was released. He was arrested and unarrested. Where does that happen?
Who's the reporter? She has to know. As far as I understand, he was taken in for questioning, and he was also given a lie detector test. And
wait. See, let me just say this. I live 2 miles away. I report 2 miles away. I come on the radio every week 2 miles away, every day 2 miles away. I am privy to what transpired that night, unlike many of the national listeners. I can
tell you. You
saw
it from 2 miles away.
Huh?
You saw what happened from 2 miles away.
No, but I live blocks away. I'm telling you, sir, that I've spoken with many judges and police officials. We had several chiefs of police on our broadcast, and all of which said there is no way Mr. Zimmerman should not have been arrested. So this comes down to a lack of due diligence by the Sanford Police Department, the same department here in this area where a lieutenant's son stomped a homeless man half to death, and the child was not arrested until a media outcry, and then he was later arrested weeks later. The same department where an unarmed black kid was shot dead by 2 white security guards, and nobody was arrested until a media outcry. Listen, I know how it is. I understand. I am a card-carrying gun guy.
But wasn't it George Zimmerman who actually led the running for justice when the police officer's kid was the one who did that?
He didn't lead it. He was involved in it. I'm not saying Mr. Zimmerman was a racist.
But the national perception is that this man is a racist, and that's why he killed Trayvon.
And I'm just going to dive in there. We were talking about how many miles away people are from where this happened. Chris Kosman's in Florida. I'm not sure how many miles away, but he's CEO of the website legalboom.org, a gun law website. And Chris, I understand your company donated to George Zimmerman's fund. Just tell us a bit about that.
Yes, sir, that's correct. When we saw all of this coming out in the news, everybody was kind of on the side, from what I could see, of the Martin family, and nobody was really taking a look at what the laws actually said and how they applied to the situation and the facts that the public knew about it at the time. So we decided to go ahead and write an article about it and how the laws applied to what we know, what the public knows, and start a defense fund to make sure that Zimmerman, if sent to trial or otherwise, would have a fair shake.
But, Chris, is that because you care about Zimmerman or you care about 776.013, the statute? Listen, I'm a gun guy also. I love my guns. But I also understand that the media crushed the mindset of many people by presenting this as a black and white crime. At the end of the day, I don't think Mr. Zimmerman had any ill will based on Trayvon as a young black man, but I can tell you the Sanford Police Department showed up and saw a dead black kid with a hoodie on and wrapped it up.
Well, I don't know about how true that is. My organization doesn't believe that a race has a part to play in it. We do care about
Are you kidding?
Well, let Chris explain that and then Don respond. Go for it, Chris.
Well, what's funny, actually, and this has absolutely nothing to do with the Martin's shooting, but there was a shooting not but a few days ago of a white Hispanic man by a black man. White Hispanic man was unarmed and shot in front of a Taco Bell. Black man was not arrested. So,
and why was that?
Why was that? Well, we're still waiting on the facts just as much as we're waiting for the facts on the Martin case. But, I'm not saying that there aren't racists in the world, and there aren't racists working for police organizations throughout the world. But what I can tell you is that if the facts are as clear as what they're making them out to be, and Zimmerman did defend himself, the police department could not, under law, as it's written, arrest him. They could detain him. They could ask him what happened, why did you shoot him, collect evidence, do everything by the books the way that any police organization should, but they could not formally arrest him and charge him with a crime because under color of law, if he did defend himself, it's not a crime.
Okay, listen now. The attorney, the state attorney, and who took over the special attorney on this case, okay, Angela Corey, decided to charge Mr. Zimmerman with second-degree murder, an offense punishable by life in prison. Now, if she saw that there was enough information to go after him on second-degree murder charges, you telling me the investigative agency shouldn't have seen something?
But there was one investigator, if I'm not mistaken, who did fill out an affidavit that was contrary to the original report. Am I not correct?
Absolutely.
True.
So if there was initial conflict with the police department, then how can you then come back and say that they did nothing wrong?
And a few people getting in touch about the nature of the law. Sunday in Poland posts on Facebook, if there's a law for people to stand their ground, there should also be a law to protect those who have no ground to stand on, like many other powerless minorities in America. Kane is in Florida, posting on Facebook too. I'm sick of hearing about this. It's been way over-politicised. It's just turning into a tool for gun grabbers. Sorry, but I agree with stand your ground. I guess that makes me a bad liberal, he says. But that taps into something that a number of other people have been getting in touch with us about, and I'm interested to hear from maybe Brandon on this. We've not heard from you for a while. Do you think people are using this case to push their own agenda, whatever their agenda might be?
Absolutely. I mean, this is why this whole thing has been politicized and blown up from the very beginning. Once again, I'm going to say it, what should have been a case of one man killing a boy, for if he's guilty or not, we don't know, became something about gun laws being looked at again. The whole stand your ground law is being called into question. They were able to use racism. We've got an election coming up, a big election, all right? And you'll see this throughout history. They will start trying to grab your attention and bring it somewhere else, anywhere but the election, or and in this case, what Obama's doing. It became political. It became, once again, white people and thus Republicans, whatever you want to call them at this point, are evil. Look what they did. The Huffington Post wanted to reassure everyone that Zimmerman was white. Bringing race into it. What this has become has been one big politicized mess that shouldn't have gotten this big. As is, people die every day. There's black on black crime all the time that's never reported.
Let me just dive in. Let me just dive in there, Brandon, just because I really want to read you this from the Reuters news agency. It says Zimmerman lawyer Mark O'Mara says after the hearing he chose not to ask for bail at this time because it might only arouse the fervour around the case. I'm not sure if that contradicts what we heard from a different agency earlier on, but we'll try to clear that up. What do you think of that, though, D'Amica? Because it might only arouse the fervour around the case.
You know what? That's a good PR move. Is it justified for Zimmerman? I believe some people would probably think that that's not fair for him, but I do think it's a good PR move. And had some other people in this case made some good PR decisions, I don't think it would be the circus that it is.
And I think I've just cleared this up, that the previous line said that that George Zimmerman would be allowed to apply for bail, and that was about the lawyer saying he did not choose to apply for bail at this time. So I think that clears that up. Well, it's been fascinating speaking to you all. Thanks so much to Melissa, blogger in Texas, to Barbara Liston, the Reuters reporter in Orlando, to Brandon in Georgia, to Chris in Florida too. And thanks so much for your time, Don and D'Amica from the Don Miller Show, based in Altamonte Springs in Florida. Thanks for your time. We'll no doubt come back to you as this story develops and we continue talking about it. And you can carry on talking about it now, of course. It's facebook.com/World Have Your Say. We're on Google Plus as well, and you can tweet with the hashtag WHYS to chat to everyone else interested in that subject.